I believe Dwayne Haskins is traveling down a dangerous road that could make him end up similar to Josh Rosen. Yes, I know Josh Rosen is in his second year, but the two already have quite a few similarities. They both start off as a backup behind a somewhat veteran quarterback. Dwayne Haskins behind Case Keenum, who has been on 5 teams so far. Sam Bradford for Josh Rosen, who is on 4 teams up to that point and is now, of course, out of the league. Josh Rosen made his debut week 3 as a last resort substitution thrown into the fire against the Chicago Bears. And Dwayne Haskins made his debut against Daniel Jones in week 4 against the Giants. And it really could have been the exact same situation had he started week 3, and he almost did in week 3 against, you guessed it, the Bears. So there were really close similarities. And for their starts, Haskins was horrible. Absolutely horrible. The only notable statistic that I can probably write down is that he had 3 interceptions. Same with Josh Rosen, 1 interception. For Josh Rosen, he has a bit more of an excuse. He was thrown into the fire, horrible situation. Dwayne Haskins, kind of the same thing. Thrown into the fire again. A bit. Not really, because it was the Giants. And the Giants don't really have a great defense like the Chicago Bears do. But still, young quarterback thrown into the fire without any sort of preparation, or without any sort of anyone telling him beforehand, hey, you're going to start this game, which is what the Giants did with Daniel Jones. They had him play from the beginning to the end rather than throw him in the third quarter or second quarter or whatever. And you look at their situations right now. Offensive line for both teams, it's horrible. For Josh Rosen when he was with the Cardinals. The Cardinals had one of the worst offensive lines. Dwayne Haskins, the only one on the offensive line that's actually good is Trent Williams, but guess what? He's holding out, so the offensive line is not protecting him anytime soon. They don't really have any weapons for their teams. Dwayne Haskins, not really. Josh Rosen, when he was with the Cardinals. Larry Fitz, you could argue maybe Christian Kirk, but he was also a rookie, so you don't really have that veteran presence aside from Larry Fitz, which Josh Rosen did have, but for Dwayne Haskins, not really. And for both teams, the coach was on the hot seat. Jay Gruden is potentially going to get fired sometime this season, if not this week. And the coach for Josh Rosen, the head coach, was fired immediately after the season. They don't have a great front office for both teams. For Dwayne Haskins, the owner is not very well liked. GM, not that great. Cardinals front office is a mess. Pretty much everything from the top down is pretty bad for both teams. For the Cardinals with Josh Rosen and Dwayne Haskins with the Redskins. And also with Josh Rosen, you could tell that the owner, the coach, not necessarily the coach, GM, that's what I was looking for. The GM and the owner didn't really believe in him, and so he ended up being a 1-year stand-in until they got their guy now, Kyler Murray. And now you're having rumors of Haskins maybe not having the full trust of the owner, or the owner wasn't fully sold on him. And I think that's just cooking up for a bad recipe. At this point, you can clearly see that Haskins is set up for failure. His first game, not only thrown in the fire, but against Daniel Jones. Now that's probably part of the reason why he was thrown in so early. That's not even a last resort, but thrown in just because the owner wanted to see him play, because he saw Gardner Minshew, he saw Daniel Jones, Kyle Allen tearing the league up already, even though Daniel Jones didn't have a great game against the Redskins. He wanted to see what Daniel Haskins could do. But guess what? that's dangerous. That's dangerous because he doesn't have the right pieces, like I mentioned before. But also, you saw Daniel Jones in his debut: 2 touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns, 2 passing touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns. I mean, that's great. But now you set him up for You set Haskins up for failure by having those expectations of him, and to have him play that well against the Giants and Daniel Jones by throwing him into the fire. Second game, he's probably going to start this week against the Patriots. We don't know how that's going to go. It's going to be morally and mentally destructive. You're throwing him into the fire against teams that he's not set up to play well against. And then the third game is going to be against the Dolphins. And yeah, you could say, you know what, that's good for him because it's now a moral booster. But guess what? I believe at this point, he might even lose to the Dolphins. Isn't that poetic? Josh Rosen on the Dolphins beating Dwayne Haskins, who I believe will end up like Josh Rosen if this continues. And if he loses to the Dolphins, guess what? With all the jokes running around the Dolphins, the joke will now be on the Redskins. And at that point, the effects will be enormous. All the faith that they put in Dwayne Haskins when they drafted him will be truly undone. And at that point, he will probably end up like Josh Rosen, a 1-year rental. So at this point, just let him sit. Ride it out with Case Keenum. Let Dwayne Haskins sit, learn, get someone in there that can communicate with him on the offensive side and really, really help him because he's young. That's what you want to do with young quarterbacks. Make sure there's a good offensive coach there, or a head coach that calls the offensive plays, that has a true connection with him, and can really help him excel. And really, Redskins, remember, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, Drew Brees, really almost all the remaining quarterbacks in the league, aside from these younger ones, Baker Mayfield, all sat. Didn't play their first year, except for Baker Mayfield, who was thrown into the fire mainly because Tyrod Taylor got injured. But that's a different story. Patience is okay. And at this point, it's probably best. Be patient. And if you don't, guess what? You're going to draft another quarterback this year.